Are you planning a trip to Europe? Well, don't book that flight until you watch this video. Hi friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm so excited to be here. I haven't filmed a video in probably 3 weeks now, and I wanted to share with you some of the rules and regulations and some of the things that we noticed when we were in Europe as far as the pandemic is concerned. If you aren't familiar or if you don't follow me on Instagram, then you might not know that I spent the last 2 weeks in November in Europe. And it was a wonderful trip. It was super amazing. We went to 4 different countries. So I thought I would go ahead and share in this video kind of what each country, what we had to go through, what were some rules, some regulations, who was looking for our vaccination card, who was not looking for our vaccination card, masks, country entry, country exit, all of the things. So if that sounds interesting to you, or like I said in the beginning of the video, you are planning to go to Europe in the next few months, then definitely stick around. But before I get into the video, guys, I want to give a big disclaimer. We went to these countries the last 2 weeks of November in 2021. And as you know, the situation with the pandemic is always moving. Things are always changing. There's always new rules, new things that you have to do. So definitely before you plan any trips, watch this video, but then also be sure you do your own research, check the embassy website, check the government's website, just to make sure that you have the most up-to-date information on what you're gonna have to do in Europe. And I'm gonna be breaking this video down by country. So we went to the Netherlands, just a quick trip to Belgium, Germany, and France. So if one of those countries sounds interesting to you and maybe some of the others don't, I will leave down below in the description box some timestamps so you can go ahead and skip ahead to the country that you're looking at visiting. Friends, go below, give me that thumbs up. Be sure to hit that red subscribe button so you'll be notified when I release some more videos about travel abroad or expat life abroad. And let's start talking about the Netherlands. So in order to fly into the Netherlands, we did have to provide proof of vaccination to our airline. So before we could even board, before we could check in, we had to upload our vaccination card and also our passport information. So that is something to be aware of. However, a negative test was not required. So this is an example of how the rules are ever changing. I think about a week before we went, it was required. So you had to have proof of vaccination and a negative COVID test in order to get in. However, when we went, the negative test was no longer a requirement. So luckily we didn't have to worry about getting a testing within 24, 48 hours, anything like that. So that was really nice to not have to worry about. However, when we got into the Netherlands, so we spent our time in Amsterdam, we were there for about 4 days, 3 or 4 days total. You do need a QR code in order to get into most restaurants, bars, museums, that type of thing. So just be aware that if you are not an EU citizen like myself, I am an American citizen, they do not accept the paper cards that we get here in America. So we could not get the QR code on our phones. So what we had to do, unfortunately, was take a test each morning before we started our daily activities. So the first day we got there, we actually didn't test because we didn't do too much. We went into a real casual restaurant. We just walked around outside. However, day 2 and 3, we did schedule a test first thing in the morning. And it was so easy, guys, like beyond easy. It sounds really overwhelming. I was really overwhelmed when I first heard we were going to test every day. But the testing in Netherlands when we were there was a piece of cake. You go to a website, you book a time slot, and there were so many locations. We got one super close to our hotel. It was just around the corner. And the first morning we booked a time slot for like 10 a.m. The second morning it was like 8 a.m., a little bit earlier. We were actually late to both of them. So they're not super, strict about if you come a little bit late. You just go in, they do the swab. It takes 15 minutes to get the result on your cell phone. And so what we did is we actually did the testing and then we walked to breakfast. And by the time we got to the restaurant that we wanted to go to, they had delivered us our negative result and kind of like a pseudo QR code that we could use to get into restaurants and museums for that day. As far as the hotel, we did not need to show a vaccination card to check in. We did, however, need to have that QR code that I was talking about to get into all the museums, to get into the Anne Frank house. So anything like that, you're going to need to show your QR code, which is basically showing that you have tested negative within the past 24 hours. And for the Netherlands, I briefly want to talk about the lockdowns. You guys have probably seen on the news that the Netherlands has been in, I guess you'd call it like a light lockdown for the past month now, I believe. I was really nervous because about 5 days before our trip, the Netherlands announced that they were going into a lockdown, which meant that things were closing at 6 and 8 p.m. So shops were closing at 6 p.m. and then bars, restaurants, and grocery stores were closing at 8 p.m. And initially, I think I had some flashbacks of our time in Buenos Aires, and I was not interested in going on vacation someplace where there was a lockdown. I'm glad I did end up going because things were not that bad at all. There were 2 nights that we were out at dinner and we finished at 8 and they were shutting down the restaurant, and it's kind of funny, we were walking home and the streets were packed full of people because everyone was going home at the exact same time. So things did close, but it wasn't a curfew, so you could walk around. After our meal, like we like to walk around and kind of help digest the food a little bit. You can freely walk around. It's not a curfew, it's just there's nothing open, so there's no place to like go and hang out. All right, now I'm briefly going to talk about Belgium. Like I said, we only spent 24 hours there, so it was a very quick trip. So to get into Belgium, we just took a train from the Netherlands, so that was really easy. We didn't have to show anything on the train, just our train tickets. You didn't need proof of vaccination. When we checked into our hotel, we stayed in Bruges, and again, we did not have to show anything. No vaccination card was required. However, when we went to a bar that night and also dinner, we went to a nice restaurant. They both asked to see our vaccination card. The nice thing about the Belgium though was that before we went to Belgium, so back when we were still here in Texas, we were able to send them a copy of our vaccination card and our passport, and they were able to give us a QR code. So we had a QR code on our phone before we went to Belgium that we could use just in Belgium. The shops that we went into, not any shops, I believe, asked for the vaccination status. We did take a boat tour, so it was an open air boat tour through some canals. They did ask for our vaccination card. We went to a more casual place to get a Belgian waffle. They did not ask for the vaccination card. So it was kind of hit and miss, but definitely the nicer sit-down restaurants seem to be asking for your proof of vaccination more than the more casual outdoor eating places. All right, from Belgium, we took a train over into Germany and we spent, I believe, 3 or 4 days in Cologne, Germany, for the Christmas markets. It was amazing. If you don't follow me on Instagram, you should really check out some of my reels that I created. The food was so good, the decorations were so good, the Christmas markets were like everything was so cool. I definitely want to go back. Maybe not next year, but the next year. I'm already planning my Christmas 2023 trip to Europe. So it was amazing. And in Germany, again, it was not very hard to get around. They had what they called a 2G rule. And I don't read or speak German, so I didn't know exactly what it was. But essentially in the Christmas markets, what happened was there were some cops that were going around checking vaccination status, but not very many. We spent many hours in the Christmas markets. They had, I think, 6 total in the whole city. We went to all 6. We spent many daylight and nighttime hours, and we got asked for our vaccination card twice. So it was not really a big deal at all, but you do need to have it just in case you get asked, because I imagine if you don't have it and you get asked for it, they will probably escort you out of the Christmas market. So when we were asked, we just showed our proof of vaccination, and then they put a stamp on our hand to, I guess, let other people know that we have been checked and we were vaccinated. So there were a few food vendors. Again, not all, is kind of hit and miss with the Christmas market, but there were a few food vendors that would ask before they would serve us to see our stamp, and so you just show them your hand and they give you your food or drink and you're good to go. So that is something to be aware if you're going specifically to the Christmas markets in Cologne. you should definitely have your vaccination card or QR code with you at all times. And as far as restaurants, hotels, that type of thing, we did have to show it when we checked into our hotel, and we did have to show it when we went to 1 or 2 nice restaurants. So that's something to be aware of as well, that you probably will need your vaccination proof to do a few things. We didn't need it to shop though in any of the shops that we went into, so just something to be aware of. All right, and then for the last part of our trip, we went over into France by train. Once again, didn't have to show anything on the train. We just had to show our train ticket. And we first went to Strasbourg to see the Christmas markets, and it was again really fun. In Strasbourg, we didn't get asked about our vaccination status at all. There is no stamping method. Nobody asked, none of the stall owners asked before they served us food or drink or chocolate. So we didn't get asked at the Christmas markets, so that was nice. We did just always have our vaccination proof with us at all times, just in case. We went to a more casual restaurant, did not get asked either. We did get asked for proof of vaccination when we checked into our hotel. So it kind of really just seems hit and miss as far as restaurants in Europe that we went to, whether or not they asked for proof of vaccination. And it seemed like most hotels were. In Strasbourg, we didn't do any touristy things. We did like a free walking tour outside, so nothing was asked of us to do that. But we didn't go into any museums, so I'm not sure if they would be requiring a proof of vaccination to do those types of activities. And finally, we went into Paris for the last, I think, 5 days of our trip. And it was amazing, like Paris always is. This is our second time going, and we had so much fun. I will say that I saw the most masks in Paris, so definitely in all the indoor areas, so restaurants, shops, museums, malls, just everything, people were wearing masks inside, and even outdoors. There were quite a few people wearing them just on the street, walking from place to place, out in the open air. In Paris, we did require proof of vaccination to check into our hotels and to go to, I believe, all of the restaurants. We didn't need it to go into bakeries really quickly or shops. We didn't need it for grocery stores, anything like that. Now, I have to say in Paris, I was a little bit nervous before we went. Not nervous, but it seemed like from what I was reading on the internet, there were some extra hoops we had to go through to get a QR code that would work in Paris. And when we got there, we didn't need that QR code at all. So it was actually super easy. If you've been doing any research on going to Paris or France, then you might see that they're requiring non-EU citizens to go to a pharmacy when you arrive in Paris or France and show your proof of vaccination. And then from there, the pharmacist would approve you receiving a QR code to your phone that you could use in France. So I was a little bit nervous about finding one of these specific pharmacies and whether or not we would get approved, but you're already there. And so what if you don't get approved? But we didn't have to do any of that, honestly. We used our paper vaccination card once again in every single restaurant, at the hotel. Everyone accepts it. I think pretty much everyone in Europe knows that the Americans just, and I don't know about other countries, I only know about America, but they know that we only have our paper card. We don't have a QR code. Now I just want to briefly talk about some of the things that I noticed just in general around all of Europe. And first I'll talk about things being open. I think there was some concern with some of our friends or family. Are things going to be open? Like, will you be able to do anything? Will you be able to really move around? And the answer is yes. Everything is wide open in the countries that we went to, in the cities that we went to. The museums are wide open, the churches are open, restaurants are open, bars are open, malls are open, shopping plazas are open, Christmas markets were open. There was bustling cities in every place we went to. And people are moving around, people are anxious for tourists to come back. So if you're worried about things being open, you don't need to worry. Everything is open and they are excited about getting tourists back. I also want to talk about testing in Europe. I found the testing to be really easy, very convenient, many locations to choose from, and very quick and efficient. And you had your result within 20 minutes on your cell phone that you could use. So if you're worried about testing in Europe, where am I going to go? How am I going to get it done? Do not worry. All the testing we took were completely free. They didn't ask any questions. We didn't have to show insurance. So I found the testing in Europe to be very good, very efficient. Do not worry if you need to do testing in Europe. I will say that when we came back to the US, we had to, of course, show a negative test to get into the US. When we were overseas, it was 3 days we had to take that test. I think now it's 24 hours. So we bought an at-home testing kit here in the US and we packed it in our carry-on and we carried it with us for 2 weeks. And then when it was a time, 3 days before our trip back home, we did the test easily in our hotel room. We called in, there was someone that watched you take a swab, and within 15 minutes you had the results, and then they sent you an email with the PDF letter of the result, and you could use that to upload into your flights. Again, I flew United, so it was called a Travel Ready Center, and you could just use that for your proof of a negative test. So it was really easy. I highly recommend. If you have any questions, let me know down in the comments and I will answer anything you are curious about. So in conclusion, I personally highly recommend going to Europe right now. I felt like it was easy to move around. If you are fully vaccinated, it's not a problem to get into restaurants, museums, churches, everything. It was a really good trip for us. I went with my brothers, so we had about, 7 people total on the whole trip. And it was really good. It was a great time. And do not let the rules and regulations kind of damper your thoughts on going there right now. I definitely think it is not a bad trip to take, and there's so much to see and do. And again, you can easily work with the rules that have in place. You can easily get testing in Europe if you need to. You can show your vaccination card almost everywhere if you're American, and it will work just fine. So definitely, again, do your research before you take my word on it, because I went for the last 2 weeks in November in 2021, and I'm sure things are always changing and evolving. But personally, I recommend you go to Europe. All right, friends, I will see you next week with another expat related video. Bye, friends.